All right, welcome everyone. This is Revenue Roadmap, where we talk about driving revenue and increasing profits in local businesses. So I'm Anthony Karls, and today I am joined again by our friend, Mr. Matthew Hawker.
Hello,
So,
sir.
Matt, thanks for being here with us today.
Absolutely.
So we're going to continue our conversation on leadership development with Matt, talking a little more specifics about our Giant program, how that helps build teams, increase revenue, and all of those things. Before we jump into that, Matt, I got a question for you.
All right.
It's not about a hat like we did last time,
Okay.
so no more melon questions.
Okay.
Um, so tell me and our audience, what's something about your story that most people don't know about how you navigated to where you are today?
Oof. Something about my story that most people don't know. Um, I think, wow, that's a really good question. So there's so many things. One thing I'm going to say was feel, I feel like I am pretty good at where I am today about like dealing with like unknowns. And I think a big part of that is for 13 years, I was a volunteer firefighter. And whenever our pager went off, here's the thing, right? Somebody calls 911, they're not having a good day,
No.
right? Nobody calls 911 to say, "Hey, I just want to let you know I'm doing well."
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for what you're doing. You're probably getting a lot of those calls.
right. So, never really knew what we were going to get into, right? Dispatcher would tell us like, "Oh, we got this car accident and somebody's hurt." Like they never really know like how hurt or
Mm-hmm.
like they're alive or like if there's something involving kids, it's like that could go a variety of different ways because then you got parents involved, you got screaming children. So we had to deal, in order to be a successful firefighter, you have to deal with a lot of ambiguity
Yeah.
and being okay with not knowing until you get to the point where you know. And I think that has helped me become the leader and the person that I am today is that 13 years of experience in doing that.
Nice. I'm sure we could probably dive down a really interesting rabbit trail there.
Yeah,
But I would imagine that
absolutely.
would be a really good place to like stress test some leadership skills, learn some stuff about yourself,
Absolutely.
learn
I
stuff
mean,
about others.
the people next to you literally trust you with their life.
Yeah,
And ultimately at the end of the day, that's why I left the department is because we had some new people come on the department. And at the end of the day, I didn't trust my life in their hands because of their work ethic and because of their lack of leadership. And I wasn't about to put my family in that position to get a phone call that I'm not coming home.
yeah.
So that's why I left.
Nice. Well, cool. That's it. That's awesome. Appreciate you sharing that. All right. So last time we talked about our leadership development program, and we have
Yep.
two. We started talking about the workshop transforming team communication. So today, the first module of that, or the first, I don't know, probably 3 to 4 weeks of that, is the discovering your leadership voice. So we're going to talk a little bit overview. Future episodes, we'll go a little deeper into that. So tell us a little bit about kind of this section of the training that we do with our team. So what does it look like to discover your leadership voice here at Rocket Clicks? What does that even mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the beginning of this section, one of the big things that we introduced to our team is a concept of know yourself to lead yourself. And basically, what the premise behind that is that we all have natural tendencies that then lead to us doing certain things, which are our actions. And those actions have consequences, and then those consequences then shape the current reality that we're in. So if you can think about like an infinity loop
Mm-hmm.
like this, that's what this looks like. So the that reality is then going to lead us back into like what our natural tendencies are to like deal with that current reality and then our actions and consequences and reality again. So know yourself to lead yourself. We talk about that at the very beginning because in order for somebody to successfully get through Giant, like that's a core concept that they need to learn and they will learn along the way.
Yeah.
And that's what the premise of like one of the big things that Giant is going to teach everybody on our team. So we start with that, and then it's really getting into recognizing what 5 voices are. So there's 5 voices. Each of the voices have natural tendencies within Giant. We all have those natural tendencies built within us, right? At the end of the day, we're all of the voices.
Yeah.
All have some tendencies that lean stronger towards a certain type of voice. That's called our foundational voice, which we'll talk about in a second. But the 5 voices are nurturer, nectar, pioneer, guardian, and creative. And each one of those has different tendencies or acts differently in certain situations, acts differently to certain types of information, lives in the now versus lives in the future. That's what we learn
Yeah.
at the very beginning of Giant. After we figure out like what's it like to like know yourself, speak yourself.
Nice. So, uh, for the audience, what's your foundational leadership voice?
My foundational leadership voice is a connector. So I am all about people and like inspiring people through my communication. Um, Connectors are the people that like you ever have anything go wrong at home, like maybe a pipe breaks, and you're like, man, who am I going to get a hold of to fix this? Like, I'll tell you, get a hold of a connector because they know a guy. Like, connectors know somebody for every situation. Oh, you need that? Don't worry about it. I know a guy, right? They're able to, at a very high level, engage with a whole bunch of different relationships at one time. Um, we do have our downfalls, though. We aren't always great at receiving or giving critical feedback because we're all about the people and like harmony and um, keeping that in check. But I'm a connector. I know a lot of people. That's at the end of the day. That's what it is.
Nice, awesome. So, what does it look like when our team starts to kind of identify their foundational voice? You talked a little bit about that for yourself. Like,
Yeah.
what do we really want them to come out of that?
So
That's
we want our team to identify what their foundational voice is, and the way that we do that is we go through the process of Giant. There is throughout the process of our class, people go through and like we'll talk through each voice, like the natural tendencies of each voice, and then we'll have them rate what they think that voice is to them on a color scale, similar to a stoplight. So it's like red, green, and yellow. Like green, like yep, that's me. You could be like a green yellow, where it's like most of that is me, but there's parts of it that aren't, right? And then there's yellow. It's like I some of this is yes, and then red is like yeah, this isn't me. I don't connect with any of these things very well. So we have people go through, and why it's so important for people to understand what their foundational voice is because the outcome of this, it teaches everybody the things that we're naturally foundationally good at,
yeah,
but just as important, it teaches us the things that we're foundationally not great at. And that's where we have to lean on other people of our team. Like maybe I'm not great at doing something, but Tony is really good at doing something. So I'm going to lean on Tony for his strengths because his strengths are my weaknesses. And once our team kind of understands and learns what their foundational voice is, then they can kind of figure out and see where they fit within the team, the rest of the team. And the output of that as the business owner is you're going to have one of the most cohesive, hardworking teams that work together and understand each other than anybody else in your market.
yeah. The like one of the big benefits will be a higher engagement with your team because you're doing this with everybody. I think when we talked last time, you mentioned if the leaders aren't involved with this and they're not like drinking the Kool Aid of the program,
Correct.
you will not see the impacts. So like don't don't take the program, try to implement it, and be like, all right, hands off. I'm not doing this, and I'm still going to act the same. I'm not going to get involved. This probably won't work. But so if everybody invests in like, all right, we all have different viewpoints of the world, but we're gonna like here's our new common language that we're gonna adopt together. We'll learn it and we can communicate around it. Some really magical things happen, and one of those is engagement with the team. I think retention increases. An interesting byproduct is institutional knowledge, which is really hard to lose,
Hmm.
especially at smaller businesses. When you're a small business, you're not necessarily documenting as much as you should because you don't have the time. Maybe you're not good at it, so maybe you're not. Maybe it's not just a time issue. Maybe it's also I don't know what an SOP should look like. So there's 3 steps: step 1, step 2, and step 3.
Yep.
And then a more detail oriented person is going to say, well, what happens between step one and step two? It seems like there are 19 steps here. Well, this is, yeah, that's actually true. There are 19 steps. And then between step two and three, there are another 10. So this is really a 29-step process, not a 3-step process, but you have all that institutional knowledge that is sometimes really hard to suck out. So retaining that is can be really important to continue to move your business forward, to get you to the place where you can have the time to document some of this stuff.
Absolutely.
Um, so the team goes through and they kind of like they do a red, yellow, green with different shadings of all the voices, and they kind of put these then in order at the end. They also take an assessment prior to this very specific portion of the workshop, and then we do a comparison so that we can like is the test right. It's usually accurate, but there are times when it's off.
Yep.
We compare it so that we can get everybody feeling as if they're seen in this workshop. Um, I know another point in this is like building confidence in your leadership voice. You kind of hinted at it a little bit earlier. What does that mean?
So really what that means is for a person to become the best version of themselves, whether that's at work or whether that's in their personal lives or just being a human being,
Yeah.
right? Naturally, we want to do the things that are easiest for us to do, that bring us joy, that we might be better at than other things that we're not as good at. So that within Giant itself, there's a concept of the 70-30 principle, where if we can live, so 70 and 30 is 100. So think about it as percentages, right? So if we can live our life, work, play, whatever, in 70% of the time doing the things that are enjoyable to us, then overall, we're not going to be burnt out. We're going to have time to do the things that are important to us, like family, friends, creating relationships, what have you. Maybe some people it's gaming, whatever it is, right? But if we can stay as much in that 70 opposed to the 30% of the things that are more difficult for us to do, we're going to last longer as a company. We're going to last longer with retention, because you're not asking your employees to do things that aren't in their wheelhouse, right? That's another way you could think of the 70. Like the 70 is like our wheelhouse. We all have things that are in our natural wheelhouse, and the more that we can stay there, the happier we're going to be. That doesn't mean now you have to be careful though, because you don't want to stay 100% in your wheelhouse because then you never grow,
Right.
right? Sometimes the growth happens, the best growth a person can have is in that 30. So that's why the 30 is like to stretch people. The 70% is where you're comfortable, the 30% is where you get stretched, and that's where you grow. And then eventually that could come over and become part of your 70. But that's really how you build confidence, is continuously doing things that live in your 70 while dabbling in the 30 and growing in that space to make your 70 even bigger.
Yeah, and start. I think another good way they phrase it in the Giant program is intentional versus accidental. Like,
Yes.
how intentional are you about your 70-30? Are you aware of where you are? Are you aware of what you're working on? Like, how does that line up with where you're trying to go? How does this add value in the future? Because oftentimes in every aspect of life, whether you're playing a sport or you're in a career or you're a parent, like there are parts of everything that you don't enjoy. So, um, and parts of those are like you don't enjoy them because you're not good at them yet, or like maybe you need this thing to be a C and you're really like a D minus F already. Like
Right.
you're not doing
Right.
really well here.
Yeah.
So how do we bring that up so it's not uh, such a bad experience?
That intentionality piece is huge too. Like you're right. Like we all have things in our life, at work, at home, at school, where have you, that we don't enjoy doing. But knowing knowing the 70-30, like if we're making a conscious decision, like, you know what, I'm not great at this, so I'm going to be in this 30 and I'm doing that on purpose. That's different than having something like forced upon you to do something that you don't even know that's like a tough spot for you to be in until it's too late and you're burned out,
Right.
or if it's too late and then you give up, right? Um, Understanding that and making that conscious decision is huge. And that's with work, that's with your health, that's with everything.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Matt. So next time we get together here, we're going to talk a little more in depth about each of the voices. Talk about each of those.
Absolutely.
And we'll
Can't wait.
continue down this path. So any closing thoughts here before we wrap up?
No, I'm excited for us to continue to meet and talk and get into each one of the individual voices. I have a feeling like as listeners are listening to these podcasts, they're going to be talking, we'll be talking about the voices and then be like, oh, that's me. And that's me. And then they're going to hear the next one like, oh, but that's me. But wait, I thought it was part of the first one that we talked about. We're all part of all of the voices.
Yeah.
We just have certain parts of them that come out in us more. So it's going to be a really cool thing. I'm super excited to come back.
Appreciate it, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.